For weeks now, these pro-Russian separatists here have been saying all they want is a referendum, just like the one that the Russians organised in Crimea, so that they can vote on whether to have autonomy from Kiev, from the government that they hate there. And then suddenly, today, seemingly out of the blue, the man they love most, President Putin, said, well, you know what, that referendum at the weekend, maybe it should be delayed. He was contradicting the very people he's been sponsoring.
We call on the representatives of southeastern Ukraine, the supporters of the federalization of the country, to postpone the referendum planned for May the 11th this year. We think that a direct dialogue between Kiev authorities and representatives of southeastern Ukraine is the key element of resolving the crisis.
Now, the other thing he said is that all violence should stop, and he includes in that what the Ukrainian authorities call the anti-terror operation, their efforts to get back the municipal buildings which are held by the separatists. Now, in the last few weeks, we've seen quite a lot of violence on the pro-Russian side. We've seen all those men in balaclavas, armed or with sticks and baseball bats. But today in Mariupol, we saw something rather different. We saw Ukrainian forces of the state using live rounds to disperse an unarmed crowd. They gathered outside the police station where their comrades were being held, facing off with the Ukrainian security forces. Last night, several pro-Russian protesters were killed as government forces tried to clear them from Mariupol. The crowd was angry. You don't care who you shoot, you'll shoot anyone, she said. Put your weapons down. They taunted the men who they said were from the National Guard. In their eyes, envoys from Kiev, hated aliens.
There's nothing for them here. Let them go home. They can be masters of their houses, not ours.
The police looked out anxiously. They were guarding 16 detainees inside. Who are those people? How were they arrested?
I don't know. 15 minutes ago, the police officer came out and tried to explain what's happening, but the people wouldn't let her speak, so she went back in.
The crowd were taking pictures. Then two tried to climb over the fence, and suddenly the mood changed. Firing, and the crowd's been running. It's not clear if that was live fire or blanks. Everybody's running away from the front of the police station now. The guards had thrown smoke canisters and fired into the ground. People moved back to the police station gates. Then medics came out. The detainees were fine, they said.
Bruises, dizziness, headache, just not so hard complications. Yes, there is no so much problems with their health.
So they are okay?
Until this time, yes.
But the security forces wanted this crowd to disperse, so they fired again over their heads. The National Guard are really losing patience with this crowd now. They seem to have brought in reinforcements, so that's why people are coming away from the police station, running down the slope. Through the trees we could see the new arrivals in their black uniforms, faces covered, moving the people down the embankment. People were angry. We had no guns or even sticks, they said. We were armed only with smartphones and they shot us. Several had been beaten up. This man said he couldn't remember what happened. His friends said the security forces had bashed him with a rifle butt. Less than a mile away, the municipal building, which the Ukrainian forces had retaken overnight, was back in rebel hands. Today, the security forces in Mariupol angered people, but failed to regain control. The Ukrainian flag, now a symbol of a government, they utterly reject.
Well, Lindsay, a wonderful, intimate insight into what's going on the ground. But what's been the reaction to this extraordinary about turn by President Putin? What's the reaction there?
Well, we've spoken to a couple of the people who are inside what they call the Donetsk People's Republic. That's the municipal building here, which they control. They say, well, as far as they're concerned, they're having a referendum on Sunday, but they're going to consider what President Putin said. Having said that, it's not been at all clear exactly what the question's going to be. Were there any ballot papers printed? You know, this referendum has been something of a mystery. I think you have to look at what are President Putin's motives here. What he says happened in this country was not a revolution in which a kleptocratic President Yanukovych fled and then the forces of law and order and joy appeared. He says it was a coup. And what he wants is for people here to have a dialogue with the people in Kiev, to make sure that people here get some power, which he says they're being pushed out of. So maybe he feels that the tactics so far have pushed it far enough. Now he's made the threat. Now people in Kiev will be forced to take into account people here, change the constitution, have a federal system.